Hey there, it's Silver, and this is Ball X Pit. You tend to be in for something good when you see a Devolver Digital published game. They seem to be quite skilled at snapping up passionate devs and their projects to publish them. I think they also have a certain style they look for. They tend to like things like lots of pixely blood and CRT filters, and the interesting retro style on display here fits right in. This game was actually something I covered the demo for back when it first became available during a Next Fest, and I was so impressed by it that I vowed to cover the full thing when it came out, so here I am. This is a heady mixture of sort of Breakout / Arkanoid and Survivor games that doesn't actually play exactly like either of those. You'll be rebuilding the destroyed city of Ballbylon while delving down into the pit a big meteor made when this city once stood there. It has some extremely strong meta progression and a really fun loop that is very good at keeping you on board for just one more dive. Normally, in games that feature things like chromatic aberration, vignette, and CRT filters, I instinctively turn things like that off before I even start. But I wanted to see how they affected the look of the game as a whole this time around. Even though I'm not usually a fan of effects like that, I think this game manages to fit them in pretty well, so I ended up leaving them on to help present the game on video how it's going to look when you boot it up by default. Graphically, the game uses this heavily dithered look, along with extremely heavy shading on textures that gives a certain inky PS1 game concept art vibe. It looks great, and it also feels dark and dingy to look at, which couples with the claustrophobic environments to lend everything a relatively low magic dark fantasy look. In runs, the enemies are stony and uncaring, ever filing forwards towards doom, but then the bosses show up and have a more fantastic appearance. Characters use a great hand-drawn art style on the selection screen that looks somber and harsh, and then in runs they get a 3D model that kind of looks like something out of an N64 game. In my opinion, the chess-like enemy pieces are more reminiscent of the PS1, so you get a neat low-poly mix of 3D along with those stylized and simple 2D textures and noticeably dithered colors. Colors in general are dark and desaturated, often looking bare and dim, and many of the textures look like bone or stone. Back in the hub area where you're rebuilding the town of Ballbylon, that same dismal color scheme is still present. The way the resource nodes and buildings are presented looks lovely, fittingly low poly with pretty simple textures, but also having enough detail to look kind of cozy. In contrast to the cold-hued environment down below, the town is warm and kind of reminds me of a place in perpetual fall. The building style reminds me somewhat of earlier PS1 and PS2 RTS and strategy games, which is a pretty niche bit of presentation, but a super appreciated one. The only time this desaturated color theme is broken is in the balls you can use. Several of them are rather bright colors and cause bright particle effects when they hit stuff. This makes them feel like the only source of life-saving magical power in the realm, like they're the only reason you can stand against the hordes down below. The chromatic aberration and CRT filter combine best here down below. Bright magical balls against a dark dithered background give those effects something to work with, so they wind up looking pretty cohesive, and I haven't really been tempted to turn them off because of this. As you would probably expect, music and sound effects in a game that looks like this are going to be simple and ambient for the most part, as well as somewhat utilitarian to inform the player of specific things when there's so much happening on screen at times. I think they've prioritized certain sounds to go above the rest, because much of the gameplay soundscape is going to be dominated by balls firing and bouncing all over the place. They've made the launching and bouncing sounds pretty good sounding, while not being too sharp so as to get annoying when they happen several times per second all run. The same goes for the Experience Gym collection sound, but the sound of enemies shattering on defeat is oddly satisfying, and bigger enemies sound extra crunchy. All special ball sounds, like earthquakes, lasers, and explosions, sound great, but are also not super high in the mix or loud enough to become a problem when they happen 12 times in rapid succession due to bouncing. You'll notice that all the ball sounds are short and pretty simple. They have enough body to sound cool, and they're unique enough to be identifiable when there are loads of things happening everywhere. But at the same time, none of them become obnoxious when they double or triple or no-nupple up, and I also like how the sounds tied to evolved balls tend to be deeper and more powerful sounding, which adds that little extra spice when you put in the effort to make an evolved ball in the first place. The music is often ambient work with dark and hazy foreboding sounds that remind me of lots of Western RPG dungeon music. I'd call much of the in-run music electronic dark ambience. It's got some percussion in there that gives it a beat, but often dies down to a quiet and trudging synth drone. The town music above ground is a little different though. It's almost tribal, with heavy drums and clapping during harvesting and chill drones and simple synth notes that carry something forlorn and lost sounding. It all adds up to a really nice soundscape that knows how to make the most out of comparatively simple moving parts to deliver some good, dark atmosphere, and can still pump up the intensity at the right times in a way that feels brutal and dangerous. On the gameplay front, this is a deceptively simple game that starts off with a digestible area and then evolves its loop with more moving parts as you go. When you want to start a run, you'll choose a character first. Each character starts with a special ball and a stat line. Not only does each character start with different stats, but they also have stat scaling you can look at that determines how much they are affected by each one. These start at E and go up from there. This means two characters with, say, 20 strength might have the amount of damage added by strength differ between them depending on their scaling. Once you have at least 4 characters, I think, you'll also see one of them having a plus 25% gold bonus if you play that one for a run. Then you select an area to go through. You'll only have the one unlocked at first, but as you start completing it, you'll get more. Each area after the first requires a certain number of gears to unlock since you're technically upgrading a big elevator. You get gears by completing previous areas with characters for the first time. This is one big thing that encourages you to always try new characters, since you'll want to get gears to keep progressing. Once you reach the final areas, you'll need up to 4 and sometimes 5 gears to unseal them, but by then you'll also have a load of characters to try. Before a run, you can also mess with the meta layer of the game, rebuilding Ballbylon and harvesting resources. You can use the gold you get in runs to buy new resource nodes and place them wherever you'd like in the space that you have. More advanced resource nodes also take some resources from previous node types to place. Then you can harvest, where you'll select a starting direction and all of the characters you have unlocked will run in a line, bouncing off of buildings and walls, harvesting any resources they come into contact with. There's a harvest timer that determines how long your characters can bounce around for, and once they return, you can't harvest again until you go on another run and come back to the hub. There are also tons of different buildings to find. Each layer of the dungeon has a certain number of blueprints you can find from beating the bosses in it, which encourages you to run them several times to find them all. Bringing a blueprint back home will let you construct that building if you have the gold, resources, and space. When you first place a new building, it'll just be scaffolding. You have to use your harvesting peeps to bounce off of it several times to fully construct the building. The deeper you go in the dungeons, the more bounces buildings will need to be constructed. There are houses that unlock new characters when you finish them. There are buildings that passively increase certain stats for everyone just by existing. Some buildings auto-harvest certain resource nodes around them, and others can work more efficiently for extra materials, but they require assigning a character to work at them, who then won't be a part of the harvest line that you make. When you beat a certain dungeon for the first time, you get this totem thing for each one that you can build, which slowly increases stats based on clearing that floor with more people. The little square of space you start with won't be enough for long. Luckily, you can zoom out and purchase new squares to add to your land with gold. It starts out very cheap, but it gets more expensive every time you buy one. You can also choose to upgrade most buildings except for homes. Upgraded resource nodes can be hit multiple times for more of what they give, and other buildings will provide a more powerful version of whatever they do with each upgrade. Upgrading tends to cost a lot of resources and also puts the scaffolding back on the building, so you have to smack it some more to complete the upgrade. Once you choose a character in a dungeon layer, you'll get plopped down on that floor and start your run. Your character, at the bottom of the screen, can move around freely and aims wherever you point the mouse. Enemies will spawn at the top of the screen and slowly move down as it scrolls, automatically attacking you if they reach the bottom. All you have to do is click, which will fire a stream of baby balls, yes, that's what they're called, and the special ball you start with. Bouncing them around on walls and against enemies is key to dealing solid damage, as just aiming straight for an enemy is often not a good way to do it. Once they return to you, you can fire them again. You can also toggle an auto-fire that shoots them out as soon as they return, but you have to be careful with it, as most characters move a lot slower while firing. As you destroy enemies with the power of your balls, they'll drop experience gems. You'll want to pick those up before they scroll off the screen. But if you get too close to an enemy, they'll attack you. So a big part of the gameplay is about targeting certain areas of the screen to clear away obstacles and collect loads of loot. The bar on the left side of the screen is your experience and health, and it looks different for every character, which is an awesome little bit of design that I appreciate. The vertical gauge on the right shows your progress on this floor. Each exclamation point on it is a boss encounter, and the gauge is always going up even while fighting the bosses. When it maxes out, it'll turn into a health gauge, and the final boss of that floor will spawn. Also, when the final boss is on screen, you'll sort of magnet up all drops automatically, probably because you can't really traverse most of the screen without getting killed. As you collect XP, you'll level up, which will increase one stat for that run, and also gives you a choice between 3 different rewards. These rewards can be new special ball types, passive gear, as well as level increases for balls and gear you already have. Leveling them up makes them significantly stronger, and the max level for everything is 3. You can hold up to 4 balls and 4 items, so you max out quickly, but there's a reason for that. Sometimes, when defeating enemies and always bosses, you'll drop a spinny rainbow thing called a fusion reactor. Collecting one of these will present you with 3 options: fission, fusion, and evolution. When you first start a run, only fission will be available, as the other options require multiple things to be max level first. Fission will randomly level up anything you currently have on you. The number of possible levels is randomized. It can say just 1, but it can also go up to from 1 to 5. This means that there are kind of double RNG effects here, as the range of levels is random, and so is the number of gained levels within that range. So it may say 1 to 5, but that means you can still just get 1. These are often needed to get maxed out balls quickly, but the real power of these comes from the other 2 options. Fusion lets you fuse 2 max level balls together to form a single ball that does both of the things its parents did. These can be really strong and give the player a bit of expression in their build to try and create something overpowered. Combining, say, a laser ball that shoots a laser where it bounces off an enemy with a ghost ball that passes through enemies will get you a ghost laser ball that fires every time it passes through, a rapid fire beam ghost. It's also important to make these because it frees up a space in your inventory, and since you can only hold 4 balls, this lets you have more than 4 worth of firepower total. Evolution is even better. It takes 2 specific max level balls and combines them into a unique ball you can't get any other way. It isn't just a combo of 2 things, it's a more powerful, unique third thing, like the Earthquake and Burn balls becoming the Magma ball, which creates patches of damaging magma wherever it bounces. A truly powerful build that has the necessary power to reach the end of the floor will have a combination of evolved and fused balls based on what you're able to draw through leveling up. Your passive gear items can also be evolved when they're at level 3, but there are far fewer evolved forms of them, so they can be much harder to guess which ones you need. They are pretty strong though, and are generally worth the extra effort to add to your build, although I'd personally recommend focusing your earlier reactors on evolving balls. You'll need the extra damage to even get far enough to find the future reactors. Enemies start out as simple chest-like pieces that drop in and slowly advance, but as you go, you'll find there's quite a bit of variety in terms of things it'll send after you. One big one are the projectile-firing enemies. As the crowds get denser later in the run, these can zone you out of sections of the screen. You can actually destroy the projectiles mid-flight as well, but of course that implies you find the time to target anything other than the encroaching wall of enemies. If you do manage to clear the screen of enemies entirely before more spawn, it'll give you a gold bonus and vacuum up the screen. Later levels of the dungeon will add all sorts of new hazards for you to face as well, making sure you don't get too comfortable. The ice area, for instance, will add stacked enemies where multiple duplicates are stacked on top of each other, allowing for even more dense screens because you have to destroy each stack separately. It also has patches of ice on the ground that cause you to slip quickly when you cross them, potentially into the face of an angry army. Once you get used to them, though, you can actually use them to traverse the screen more quickly. Some enemies will also have a shield of ice on one side. Balls will just bounce off that side entirely, so you'll have to bounce things around them to hit them from a different angle. I love the fact that each layer of the dungeon has unique challenges and hazards specific to them. It gives a good sense of identity to the layers and keeps you guessing as to what horrors you'll deal with next. By the way, when that progress gauge reaches each boss marker, the lane you're fighting in will expand. This gives you more room to maneuver, but also ups the enemy density by quite a bit, making these sections almost like DPS gates you'll have to pass. When you end a run, either by victory or death, your kills will be tallied up and added to the character you played as experience. The levels they gain from this are permanent, and increase various stats for all future runs. At certain level thresholds, the house you built for them will be upgraded, gaining some new benefit, and you'll also be able to occasionally pick a passive that improves how that character harvests back at base. So you'll take all the gold and resources that enemies dropped, as well as any new blueprints, and return to base. You'll try out some new buildings, harvest more resources for upgrades, and maybe unlock a new character to try. Then head back down in the pit and try again. This means the gameplay loop is very satisfying here, with all the variety in characters, stages, balls, and evolutions, plus all the thematic changes in difficulty for each layer of the pit. It feels like you always have something to do, to work towards, and to look forward to unlocking. This game has one of the strongest just one more run feelings I've experienced in the genre. Not to mention, when you beat a layer for the first time, you'll also get some new passive items and ball types permanently unlocked, expanding your options and opening up new strategies as you go. Ball X Pit is a very rare example of this genre that gets basically every aspect of the formula right, while also adding in some fresh ideas. The combination focusing on Arkanoid style gameplay was a great idea, and it's super cool to see how creative they can be with it while they incorporate new challenges as you descend into the pit. This is one of those games that shows how much clear passion it was made with just by playing it. It's the kind of project that seems like it was a blast to make, and that they may just have some more ideas in store for later on. I'll go ahead and put the link to the Steam store page in the description below this video so you can check it out. Hopefully this was a good delve into the game to help you figure out if it might be for you. At $15, it kind of seems like we're stealing from the devs. There's so much content and polish here that I could easily see it going for 20 or maybe even 25, and many probably still wouldn't complain. So there you go. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time.